So me and my sisters used to rent out a house. I lived there with my fiance and dog. Strange things would happen at night. I once saw a 7-foot shadow stroll past the side of my porch. I was smoking at the time and it was late at night, so I figured I was just tripping. My cousin had stayed with us for a week a few months after. She rushed inside one night while smoking a cigarette. She told me that she had seen a 7-foot shadow walk along the side of the house. I wish I could say it had been reassuring, but part of me wanted to believe it had just been a hallucination. We had a sliding glass door that led out to the porch. We didn't have blinds for it, so at night it gave you a clear shot to the porch from the kitchen. I would avoid that area at night. I always felt like something was watching me from the darkness. We moved out of that house for a few months, but my sister stayed behind with her roommate. When I had moved, we threw away our dog cage. A few weeks later, my sister and her roommate heard the familiar rattling sound of the bars. It had come from one of the empty rooms in the back. I kind of laughed this off and jokingly referred to it as the ghost dog. We moved back in with them a few months afterwards. It was around 4 a.m. in the morning. I awoke suddenly to the sound of a dog's whimper. It had been coming from underneath my bed. My dog liked to sleep there, so I thought my dog had either been hurt or had a bad dream. Whenever my dog would whimper, I would always rush to his side to check in on him, but this time, something caused me to hesitate. There had been a deep, ominous chill to the air. That feeling, the spine-chilling feeling I had felt from the porch, the feeling of being watched. The whimpering continued, and I called out quietly to my dog in the darkness. I gathered what little courage I had and switched on my phone's flashlight. I quickly slid off my bed and leaned down to peek underneath. The whimpering stopped as my flashlight lit up the darkness. I looked around in confusion, and I found nothing but stray clothing that had been sucked up by the abyss of my bed. My dog wasn't there. My eyes lit up with horror as the whimpering sound resumed directly behind me. That's when I noticed the sound had an odd, chilling tone to it. I quickly spun around to face my closet that had been wide open. I always closed it at night. Call me paranoid, but I always felt anxious when it had been left open at night. I had practically been crouched on the ground directly next to it. I quickly got up from the ground and scanned the darkness for my dog. My flashlight fell upon him sleeping peacefully, curled up by my fiance's feet. He's a big dog and my room was small. He couldn't have moved that quickly without me noticing. I wonder if whatever I had heard had been a ghost dog, or if it had been that shadow me and my cousin had seen, trying to lure me out of bed late at night. We moved out of that house. I now keep drapes on our sliding glass door and all of the windows. I still occasionally get that feeling when someone leaves the drapes slightly ajar at night, the intense, spine-chilling sensation of being watched. I think it was my sophomore or junior year in high school when I found out my great-grandfather died. I'm pretty sure it was November, as I remember it being chilly at the funeral, but still before Christmas. Most of my family is from a very small, rural town in Kentucky, and that was where the funeral was held. For a little bit of context, I have a cousin with whom I am very close. We grew up together and might as well be brothers. While we live in North Carolina, as kids we would go visit family in Kentucky over the holidays with our grandparents. We drove up together as moral support. I remember being kind of freaked out by the whole thing, because my family is normally very bottled up in terms of emotion, and I was seeing people who had never more than patted me on the back sob uncontrollably. I'm not the most comfortable with unbridled displays of grief, so it was all a bit taxing for me. By the end of the day, We were both pretty exhausted and headed to bed a bit early. Since my family is cheap, we were staying at my now deceased grandfather's house, in the attic. The house itself had to have been built in the early 1900s. The attic is kind of unfinished. It is a circular room with a large wall in the middle and a small bed that folds down. We used to love playing up there as kids because there were all sorts of old trinkets and weird books he had stored throughout. Best of all, there is what I can best describe as a small crawl space that encircles the attic with a door on either side of the wall connecting it. When we were younger, our other cousins would come over and we would pretend that the books contained secrets to the convicts in town and then explore the crawl space looking for clues. We were young and in Kentucky. There wasn't a lot to do. To top it off, there was a tiny spiral staircase leading up to the attic, complete with an ancient wrought iron railing. So, being the youngest people at the house, my cousin and I were relegated to sharing the small folding twin bed in the attic. Exhausted as I was, for some reason I was having a lot of trouble falling asleep, probably thinking too much. My cousin fell asleep almost immediately. I must have tossed and turned for at least 2 hours before I finally started dozing off. I woke up abruptly, shortly thereafter, to him grabbing my arm in a panic. It scared the heck out of me, and I started to ask what was wrong when he just whispered, "Shh, shh, she's in here with us." At this point, my blood is running completely cold, and I whisper back, trying to ask him what he's talking about. No response. Bastard fell back asleep. I lay there for a while, with the adrenaline wearing off, but still scared as hell. I wanted to get up and leave, but to be honest, I was too dang scared to walk around the attic in the dark. By some small miracle, I managed to fall back asleep after that episode. Sometime later, I woke again to muffled shuffling and banging noises. It was still pitch black, and I noticed that my cousin was no longer in the bed. I saw this faint blue glow at the far end of the room, and my cousin crouched down, facing the wall. He gets up and starts walking around the attic, opening cabinet doors and obviously looking for something. At this point, I'm seriously freaked out to the point of being afraid of him. He goes to the entrance door of the crawl space nearest to the bed and opens it, squatting down and looking in with his phone. I think I managed to somehow get a strangled version of, "What are you doing?" out, because he turns back to me and purposefully says, "She's in here. I know she's in here. She's hiding." Then he gets back in bed and promptly goes back to sleep. After that, I said screw it and braved the dark to escape downstairs. I made a cup of coffee and sat up at the kitchen table by myself until one of the older family members got up and joined me. When my cousin woke up, I told him everything, and he was visibly shaken as he had no memory whatsoever of it occurring. We chalked it up to a severe bout of sleepwalking and had a good chuckle with the rest of the family once it had become light out. Still creepy as hell though. My younger brother used to sleepwalk growing up and suffered from night terrors, but I'd never seen someone act as sentient and aware as my cousin did while still being completely asleep. Luckily, that was our last night there, and I haven't been back since. This happened when I was 28 or 29. My cousin, let's call her Betty, was 14 at this time. Betty and I came home from the movie theater where we had just watched the movie Paranormal Activity. It was around 11 p.m., and me, being the terrible cousin I am, said we should go to sleep. Betty said she didn't want to, so I told her she could read a book or something. I fell asleep almost as soon as my head hit the pillow. Around 2 a.m., I woke up for no reason. I was facing the wall, so I rolled over to see if Betty was okay. As soon as I roll over, I see Betty standing right in front of me, staring at me. You know that scene where Katie is just staring at her husband while he sleeps? It was like that. I scream, obviously. I lived alone at this time, so I didn't wake anyone, and there was no one to calm me down or anything. Fully awake and freaking out at this point, I walked Betty back to the bed and laid her down. I went back to my bed and just sat there the rest of the night, terrified of what just happened. In the morning, I asked Betty why she was staring at me while I slept. She asked me what I was talking about. I explained what happened, and to this day she claims that she doesn't remember it and has no idea what happened that night. For all I know, it could have been a prank, but my cousin had never done anything like this, and has never done anything like this since. I have no idea what the heck happened that night, but whatever did happen, I don't think it was a prank.